Hi, I'm Greg. Welcome to buying, selling, or closing a business. In this video, we will talk about what you need to know when buying, selling, or closing your business. We'll also discuss what change of ownership is and what to do if there's a change of ownership of your business. First, let's discuss buying a business. When buying a business or its inventory, you should request a certificate of tax clearance from your nearest office before closing escrow. A tax clearance is a document that will protect you from having to pay any sales or use tax owed by the previous owner, as well as interest and penalties that may be owed. To find your nearest office, visit our website. If you don't obtain a tax clearance before you buy a business and the previous owner has tax amounts unpaid, you could be required to pay the tax liability as well as interest and penalties of the previous owner. If the seller has an outstanding liability, you are required to withhold the amount owed from the purchase price until you have proof from the seller that the liability has been paid. For more information on tax clearances, please see Publication 73, your California Seller's Permit. Remember, a seller's permit, license, or account does not transfer with the business. When buying a business, you may need to register for one or more of your own permits, licenses, or accounts using our online registration system. Now let's discuss changes in your business. If you already have a business and you want to add other locations, you must register each additional location for the applicable permit, license, or account. To do so, use our online registration system. Be sure to notify us about business changes to all of your permits, licenses, and accounts. Registering each location properly will help ensure you accurately report and pay your taxes or fees. If you have a change in ownership or business entity type, you generally will need to close out your permit, license, or account and register the new business. The most common types of business entities are sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, and limited liability company. For example, if you're currently operating as a sole proprietor and decide to incorporate your business, you will need to close your existing seller's permit and register online for a new seller's permit for your corporation. You will need to do this for all other licenses and accounts registered with the CDTFA as well. If you are operating as a partnership, you'll need to contact the CDTFA whenever a partner is added or dropped. Changing the partner in a partnership does not necessarily require you to close your permit and open a new one. However, if there is a change in entity type, you will need to close out your permit and register as a new business. For example, let's say you and your spouse registered as a partnership and one of you withdraws from the ownership of the business. This is a change in entity from a partnership to a sole proprietor and requires a new registration for the business. A legal separation or divorce decree awarding the business to one person is not sufficient notice for the CDTFA. Now let's talk about selling or closing your business. When you intend to sell or close your business, there are a few things you need to do. If you sell or close your business, you need to close your seller's permit account and any respective licenses or accounts. To do so, you need to complete and send a copy of Form CDTFA 65, Notice of Closeout, to your local office. If you have additional CDTFA administered tax and fee permits, fill out CDTFA 345 SP, Notice of Business Change. Closing your account will help protect you from possible liabilities incurred by the person who buys your business. You can find a copy of the forms in the Forms and Publications section of our website. You must also file your final tax and fee returns and make any final payments on time. If you sell your business, remember to report any sales of fixtures or equipment on your final return. Keep in mind, the reporting period and due date of your final return may change, depending on the tax and fee program or the date you discontinue operations. You can find a listing of filing due dates on our website, or if you need help figuring out when your final return is due, give us a call. Remember, your permit is valid only as long as you are actively engaged in business as a seller. If you're no longer conducting business as determined by your permit, license, or account with the CDTFA, you should close out your accounts. Likewise, the CDTFA may cancel your permit if it finds that you're no longer engaged in business as appropriate to your permit or license type. If you need more information on how to close out your account, please see Publication 74, Closing Out Your Account, on our website. So here are some things to remember when buying, selling, or closing a business. Make sure you get a tax clearance if you are purchasing a business. Make sure all of your business locations are registered and have the correct types of permits, licenses, or accounts. When you close your business or change ownership types, let us know. And if you're ever unsure, give us a call at 1-800-400-7115. By taking these critical steps, you can avoid any penalties and interest and delays in your business operations. For more tips, explore our website or watch our video series, Making Sales in California. Thank you for watching, and thank you for doing business in California.